Hello and welcome to the Bearded Mystic podcast, and I'm your host Rahul N Singh. Thank you for joining me today. I am joined today by Knowe Rata, who is an Australian non-dual teacher or spiritual teacher, and who's pretty big on YouTube. But I'm gonna let him introduce himself to you, and most of all, before we go to Knowe, I want you to like and comment on this video and subscribe to both of our channels also. So over to you, Knowe.
Thanks, Rahul. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And to you reaching out. And yeah, for anyone watching that hasn't seen my sharings on YouTube, I guess it's weird trying to describe this thing of what I do, but I guess I create videos and I share videos about the nature of reality and our experience. Um, I started uploading a couple of years ago, and yeah, I've it's been a great journey so far. I really share about um, the nature of being and who we are, and the spiritual reality that is behind everything in this world. And I also love to share about our human experience, our emotional body. I think that's really important to me as well, to include that side of it. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you. So, what got you interested into spirituality? Was it something that you've have you grown up in a spiritual household, or what does it look like for you?
It's yeah, it's funny when you say that, because like if you grow up in a spiritual household, because it's like, then I instantly, when you say that, I think to like, just like random funny stuff happening with my family, and completely, like not what people would expect, like just mucking around and kind of like making fun of each other. And like I grew up in a really normal, like loving household. I have like two really good parents that I'm really grateful and proud to have, and I have a younger brother and sister. And yeah, I started, I guess, in my teen years. It started as a really natural unfolding. Um, as we all do in our teen years, I was having difficulties, some stuff at school and just in life in general, and that's really normal. But I tended to be quite sensitive around a lot of it, and that was like really forcing me into a place of inquiry. And I really remember just, sitting in my room and like searching on YouTube at 14, 15, like what is meditation? And watching, there's a guy called on YouTube somewhere. I used to watch him, like Vishadu Das or something.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I used to watch his and some other people, and also getting into that whole like self-help world, because I felt at the time I needed it. But I remember just like sitting in my room and closing my eyes and trying to meditate, and like at that age being so naive, like even trying to like visualize worlds and stuff like that. Um, and yeah, it really just unfolded from there. I um, became really interested in it, and I kind of kept it a bit hidden from some friends and people in my life. And even a friend of mine was like, "Oh, you seem pretty happy just like sitting in your room, like meditating and stuff like that." And I, around about 18, 17, I actually studied a diploma of film. It was like filmmaking, and there was also some uh, acting stuff, and that's all I did. But that as well in itself actually created like um, such an opening for me, because it wasn't even like that I realized quite soon. It wasn't even that world that I was really interested in. It was like there was something in that year of that diploma that was like a mini awakening in itself, because something really clicked when I was, learning about, you know, scripts and all of that, and emotions, where I realized like, oh, there's actually something behind this. And I actually realized like, we're all kind of doing that in this everyday life. Like this is a really a big play. And when you are present in the moment, there's a sort of like there's a life and uh an awareness like behind everything that's happening. And so that was great in itself. I thought I might have um, a career in that, but then it just that I believe that was there at the time to like show me more about beingness and the nature of who we are. And I moved to Sydney not long after, and then I got involved with a Buddhist group here called Triratna Buddhism, and that was amazing in itself. I was doing like weekly classes, retreats. I got into like Bhakti Yoga, and I was part of a group there. And behind that as well, I was just learning a lot online, like teachers like Eckhart Tolle, Rupert Spira, like they've had a huge influence on me. And yeah, it kind of just picked up more and more, and then I had some breakthroughs, and then it just felt like a natural unfolding to start sharing, because I felt so much freedom and peace inside, like so much had opened up, and so much, yeah, there was just so much freedom and joy. It was so unbelievable to me, but so natural as well, right? Like nothing special at all, but it just felt so liberating, like what I was going through and kind of opening to, that I just like, yeah, I have to share this. And I find great joy in doing that. So yeah.
Oh, wonderful. So we could say like spirituality is kind of interwoven into your life very naturally. So it seems. And you mentioned how you did the acting, and Rupert Spira talks a lot about the King Lear example. I think you must have heard of it, but
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was coming to my mind. That obviously the actor will always know that he's playing the character King Lear, and if he starts thinking he's King Lear, that would be a bit strange, going home and thinking he's part of that. But so that's really interesting that you mentioned that, and you mentioned something about awareness. And um, what I would like to know is when you started sharing more about this, what you've been going through. How did you remain grounded in awareness during that time, or
Yeah.
even now, so to speak?
Well, that's a really good question, because um, I've heard speakers speak about that before, where some people might not be ready to hear some of this, or just not in a place to maybe surrender to it fully. And um, yeah, that's really it's really interesting to me, because I the mind and our thought streams, our personal self, like it always wants some sort of it always wants some sort of proof for everything, right? And even in our human reality, a lot of us um swear by science, like it's the new god. And a lot of this, I think, can yeah, it can be a bit destabilizing, like if someone's wanting like an exact proof or written proof, because like it just doesn't operate in the level of mind. Like we're speaking about something that is non-conceptual and is just here. It's alive, and it's always here, and we all know that. And I'm sure a lot watching, and yourself, that the reality we're speaking about it's purely here, and um, there's a quality that you can speak about it, but you can't exactly like hit the nail on the head. And back to
Mm.
what you asked is like, how did I stay grounded? Was, yeah, really looking after myself, even from a younger age, was like, you know, by no means am I definitely like, by no means am I like, oh, like trying to be some sort of Puritan or something, or saying, oh, you have to do everything really clean. Um, and, that's not really the way, but, I looked after myself. Like I kept meditating for years, and there were certain things that I felt really disrupted my system and my like evolution, one being, and I actually spoke about this recently, like alcohol. Like I stopped that some years ago, and again, like there's many like people that are awake to reality that drink, and it doesn't make a difference, but that here like helped me a lot. And just a lot of like self compassion and love as well, like when it does get hard, it's knowing that you're never stuck, you're always returning to yourself here. And there will be hard moments. There will be moments where you feel like your whole world is getting torn apart. And that's happened here. And it's knowing that actually like in those moments where it's really difficult, there's gold on the other side, right? And
Mm.
it's something I've inquired into a lot, this whole thing of like the dark night of the soul and the shadow and everything like that, and like really like, yeah, what is that? And I believe it is just something in humanity that exists within the individual, but it exists within the awareness, within the nature of you, just like, the happy, great, really joyful things exist within you. It's just part of the play. And the waking up out of that is seeing that it is some sort of like creation and a rising, and that nothing is fixed, and it's just a wave that's coming. And I guess the more you can come back to that place of like not getting so lost in what's appearing, then you're able to find that like peace that never leaves you. It's just always kind of there in your experience, and it's what we are all right now. And we just feel it. We don't have to try and understand it, even through what I'm saying. It's just something that is felt. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you speak of this awareness and when you speak of this, the inexpressible, uh, those that get it, they can actually feel what you're saying right now. Like, I could experience exactly what you're experiencing because it is beyond location and beyond time and space and all that. And so that's important. What I really liked about what you said, and which I felt was really, it's important and sometimes overlooked, is actually about looking after the human body, whether pre or post awakening, because just because we are not the body and mind doesn't mean that we just can do whatever we want and indulge and or even abstain if you're doing it for as you mentioned, Puritan reasons. Like that would be going on the other side, uh, and and um, and I can somewhat relate to the whole, not drinking alcohol can be beneficial. Right now I'm going through this thing of not eating any sugar. Not It's very difficult, as that's like a drug in itself. So but it's just watching the body, and
And I
yes,
still have,
awareness
sorry
still
to, yeah, I
remains.
still have moments with sugar as well, where, my partner will bring home like brownies, and then it'll be every second day eating a brownie or something like that. And it's also, that's part of the joy and fun, is like letting yourself enjoy, not just like, if it feels like, you know, of course, if it feels like there's just a desire there, and you want to have a brownie or an ice cream, then have it and explore those kind of feelings of like, holding back and then enjoying. And yeah,
Mhm.
I cut you off though.
Yes.
Sorry.
Um, no. That's absolutely fine. Um, and I think, and yeah, just remaining in awareness when those desires come up, when that feeling of wanting, which has been quite regular, like I just want to, eat something sweet, um, and I think of different ways of how to do it, or I just scroll on TikTok and look at desserts, and but I'm observing my mind doing all this, and it's amazing that while being on this path, that I can remain in awareness and let the mind go wild, and yet still have like absolute control. Um, and it's just it is a paradox in itself, and I think that's only come about for me more in more recent times when I've able to let the mind go places, but also kind of remain grounded in awareness. uh, you mentioned that you did a bit of Bhakti Yoga, and you know what? Whenever I hear someone's done Bhakti Yoga, I get really interested because I don't hear a lot of, as non-dual speakers actually go into Bhakti, and I think Bhakti is very important, especially if you're preparing or even after awakening too. So yeah, tell me a bit more about your Bhakti Yoga and what that looked like.
Yeah, well, it was with a group here in Sydney called the Bhakti House, and it was
Yeah.
just such a warm and vibrant community to get involved in. And it's actually funny. I remember at one stage, like telling my mum that I was going there, and she was like, because some people from those older generations might have, I think, like it was shown on TV years ago, like 20, 30 years ago, in a certain way, like, oh, these people like walking down the street and like chanting all these stuff. And she's like, oh yeah, like isn't that the Hare Krishnas or something? And like thinking I've like joined some cult or something. And um I was like, no, I just like I just like going, but it was like such a warm community and like so what I found so profound when a kirtan is being done because it's
Mhm.
like a I felt it opened up so much because it's like a singing meditation, with the instruments and the
Yes.
music, and there is something because it's so devotional and it has like this meditative quality. There's something that just like opens so much when you do that, and you just feel like so much energy and love. And I, read the Bhagavad Gita and I was like, yeah, I'm not surprised why this like has the effect that it does. And yeah, I learned so much from that, and I really all of those paths, there's so many that I really admire and think are really special, and I always wanted to come back to that in myself. Like I kind of knew, and at least for now, like I'm not just going with one specific, like, I guess I'm devoted to this path, which is really life. Like, it's just being devoted
Mhm.
to life. But, I had friends even through Buddhism that were like, so devoted with that. And I always like admired it so much because it's such like a surrender. Uh, to do that. And I think it's so beautiful. And, there doesn't need to be this tension maybe in these worlds of like, oh, this is the right thing, this is wrong. And, we all know that they're all just speaking about this timeless truth. Um, and,
Yes.
one path might take someone further up the mountain than another. And that's how it is.
Yeah. Yeah. However, I agree with that. Whatever takes someone to that peak of the mountain, so be it. As long as you don't get halfway up the mountain and think you've reached the peak, all is good.
Yeah.
And I actually, in more recent times, I felt like a real affinity towards bhakti, towards devotion. Like there is a thing about, I've been reading some works of Sri Ramakrishna Paramhansa, and and he was Swami Vivekananda's guru, so he would talk about wanting to be with the Divine Mother or with God, and would talk about connecting with God, merging with God. And I've recently, as much as I love the kind of the logical and rationality of non-duality, but when you add bhakti to it, the devotional aspect, the oneness that you feel with the supreme and your, you know, the so-called limited self that's in this body, really there isn't any, but that oneness, when that merging happens, there is a profound sense of peace, calmness, boundlessness that I don't think just comes with the purely rational non-duality. Sometimes I feel that can be missing, that boundlessness
Mhm.
and the inner peace that can come from being devoted to something higher. Even though, yes, in the at the end, there's no such thing as higher or lower, and there's no such thing as limited and limitless. It's all one. But that play that you do in bhakti, I feel I feel like it gets rid of a lot of the maybe the shadows that people go through. Like I never had to do shadow work, and I wouldn't know what
Mhm.
to do in that. Um, but all I know is that bhakti kind of helps with all of um, those vices or negativity or that dark energy that can possibly consume the mind. Um, so yeah, I like. I think kirtan helps and chanting mantras and all that.
Yeah, and it can give some
It,
structure. It can give some structure around it, and I guess like we're in a really interesting time where it's like there's there's so much on the internet now. Like you can just find anything, and you can find any teacher and really like find what resonates for you and what doesn't, and it's so like individual in that sense. And I had this conversation with a friend who was part of this Buddhist group that I was also part of for a bit, and like I guess, and like he maybe struggled to understand like that part of the internet, that is more like our culture is a lot more individualistic now, but I don't really see it in that way. Like it's taking away from the path. In fact, I think it's even better for people because there's just so much that's accessible there. And I really, I really feel, and I feel this in what I share, like there's so much connection there and space for people to just like carve their own way. And we can find a place where we can all share really what's worked for us and what hasn't. And that's like getting rid of dogma, I guess, is like all sharing
mm,
from the same space. Like we all know that, and even the younger generations that grow up now, they lots of them like they won't really have to go through this like discovery thing. It's going to be like the shift is really, and I don't want it to sound pretentious, like, oh, the shift is happening, when people like it really is in some sense. And um you know, around the world, like it is just growing this sense of like understanding more about ourselves and why we're here. So these younger generations will just grow up and they won't maybe have to like go through this whole seeking journey as much. It'll be more about like play and kind of expression of that beingness and that awakened, enlightened place that we're all in already.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you think about it, with artificial intelligence and ChatGPT, um, I think I am interested to see how the spiritual institutions are going to cope with this. When I say cope is probably a bad word, but like more how they're going to deal with this, because you will now have, I hope, more rational. If they're seekers, they'll be more rational and more. attuned to the language. Um, but the only thing that's going to be missing is the experience, and that's where I think a community comes in, and the community can give a real good experience, as you mentioned, of sharing ideas, sharing experiences, sharing just the energy. Sometimes it's just as simple as that. I think yes, in on the internet, if it's, and I think it is being done by a few. I think a few of my friends have been able to set up some real good spiritual communities. I think one of them's on school.com, Sunny. He's got a good community there.
I think I saw
I
that because
think,
I tried a school thing for a bit, and then I just felt like it was the wrong timing, and it was good to start with, but yeah, sometimes we need to do that,
yeah,
try different things. But yeah, I've ran it, bumped into his, yeah.
yes, yes. And I think if we can cultivate those communities, as long as it's not around a personality alone, that is actually around the teachings, I think that can be really beneficial, especially with the rise of artificial intelligence. Because, yeah, you could ask ChatGPT about the nature of awareness, but the only thing is, it will never be able to give you the experience of awareness.
Mhm.
It can tell you about what the experience will feel like. It'd be very data driven, but not you won't be able to experience it. And that's, I think that's where the community has to be ready for that type of audience as well, which I think is going to be more prominent actually than not, um, for the younger generation,
Yeah,
so to
what
speak.
what do you mean by like that type of audience? Like, what will they be ready for? What do you mean in that?
So I think for the for going into the experience of awareness and being grounded in that in consciousness, and being able to experience the boundlessness of consciousness, the formless aspect, where they can actually transcend the body and mind and be able to do the work necessary to remain in that state,
Mhm.
where let me take it even a step
I
further,
understand.
where I think they,
Instead of Chat GPT, like being
yeah,
a teacher
yeah,
to someone. Yeah, yeah, and
yeah,
there's some people now even who they say, well, could AI, ChatGPT, like develop, some sort of, with how fast it's advancing, like some sort of like
yeah,
presence or consciousness, and maybe it can mimic it like really, really well, but it's like what we're in now is like a natural, and even using that word natural, like what we're in now is like
yeah,
the all. We're in the quantum field, and even like everything is being created from that. This is like a creation from the spiritual dimension, and
mm,
Gaia, but then we've created technology, and it's really just an extension, this technology, of the gifts we already have within us, which is that infinite,
mm.
all knowing, like love and um, power within us.
Yes. Yeah, actually, the word that you just used now, love. Um, that is one thing I don't think artificial intelligence can ever express or explain to you, what it feels like. Love is something that is incredibly individualistic in one sense, um, because until you experience it, only then you can watch that love expand into realizing actually it's everywhere and in everything, and it's present even in the things that we probably disagree with or do not like at all or despise. It's even present there.
Mhm.
So I think, and that's the same thing with, I think, spiritual enlightenment or even consciousness. Uh, I so there's a Swami that I interviewed him, and I attended his retreat, Swami Sarvapriyananda Ji. You probably have seen
I,
him
I
around.
saw I saw
He's really big.
your video with him. I like watched a bit of it, and I have seen him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did mention once that apparently Sam Altman, who is the, I think he's right now he's the CEO of OpenAI. he was asked, "What's the one thing that ChatGPT or artificial intelligence will never know?" And he just said, "Atman equals Brahman." So, in so to
Oh
speak, that it
wow.
will never get to know consciousness in itself. That yes, it will know itself as a limited being, maybe, but it will never know actually that it's actually everything. And that can
Yeah.
only come from, I think, the human life is the one. So in Indian spirituality, they say this human birth is so special and so rare that this is the only one where you can actually get to know your true nature.
Yeah.
Uh, I can only say that's true because I'm a human being right now. So, but the understanding that it's a rare opportunity, I don't think a lot of people really understand that either in today's world.
Yeah. And what I'd like to see is like what you just said, which is like, this uh you know, um in this teaching, it's like, yeah, human life is one of the rarest, most precious things we have. Is like, really, as technology advances, like, also, which we know is happening, like, just our love for ourself, and the and life and the mystical and this world, like, just grows and grows and grows. So it's almost like running parallel to the increase of tech, because we kind of have to, as a species, to really evolve and go to the next level in our multidimensional selves, and to not do what has happened in the past, to damage the planet and all these other things. And yeah, I really can see and believe there's like something really amazing and wonderful coming. So
Yeah, yeah. I think it's going to be up to the likes of content creators and um, to make sure that they create communities which make the experience accessible, and make it. When I say accessible, I mean the actual experience accessible. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a paywall or anything like that. I'm not talking about that side of things. I'm talking more about that when you're in a conversation with someone, that they can take you to that experience. They can take you to the direct realization of what one's true nature is. Um,
And even,
but
yeah, even
my
without,
yeah,
sorry, yeah, even
no, no,
without
go, go.
even without words, like, we can get to that point where we
Yes.
just we just kind of, we know through feeling and sharing our being that we're in the same place, and that we're connected. And yeah,
It's so true. Okay, so this is. I'm going to take it here now. Silence. It's got to be the greatest teaching ever.
yeah,
I mean, I don't think there's anything close to it.
yeah. And that's what's funny about all even sharing online. Like, we use words and we use language in our everyday, and to convey ideas. But you're right, like, silence is so powerful and just teaches so much. And so there's part of me that almost feels like using words and speaking online, like, I just want to sit there in silence. But I also think there's ways we can use language that really can, like, create a create a space that actually goes beyond the words, or opens people to that, right? That it's not just the words
Yes.
that's being spoken, it's the place in which they're arising from. And that's what I try and do. That's I mean, that's what I feel every video is like. It's got nothing to do with what I say. It's like how I'm feeling, and just really, like, it's just a sharing with the other, with you, with the camera, with myself, that is just, um, from that place. And maybe that will open someone to that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can recall moments when I was with. I would ask my guru a question, and sometimes it's just met with like a few moments of silence. When I say a few moments, it felt like an eternity. Um, but there was such, that silence had such a vibration, I think no word could ever get you to, or no pointing could get you to. When it was just silence there, I just, it was like as if the whole universe is teaching. I could feel it, I could sense it, I was taking it all in, and that was just in. And it didn't matter what words my guru was going to say next, because that was, and and also I think my guru was a bit cheeky because he also smiled a bit afterwards. So it's kind of like I knew what he was doing. But that transmission that happens in silence, even when you use words like you mentioned in your videos, like I can sense that when I watch your videos, it is coming from a place of silence. It's not coming from, this is the response I want from my audience. It's not that. It's
Hmm.
coming from a much deeper place. And
Yeah.
um, and I
And
wish
that
silence
place, that
was explored more.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And that place is freedom. Like even when we are speaking,
Wow.
that silence, beingness is always there. And I guess what you are and what lots of us are doing, and even those just in their everyday life, is we're transmitting that, right? We all have that radio tuner that can tune into that space of beingness. Like we can, turn it up or down, and yeah, that's really what we're transmitting uh, all the time, and it's sharing that place of freedom, and that's what I'm really wanting others to do. Is like, I know we were saying before about like uh, how people share, but it's like what I'm wanting is like others to be in that place as well, and so like they can do their work, the creative work, or share from that place. And it's quite a there's quite like it's quite a dance, and something I'm dancing with is like, how free can I be in this video? Free can I be in the sharing? How creative can I be when in this kind of like matrix construct? We're a little bit like um, it's a little bit limited in some way, in terms of like, sometimes when someone expresses so much, or really like is so bright, or there's so much play, like it can, like, maybe others might think, oh, something's off here. But then um you're really entering that space of freedom. So I think we're going to learn more about play, a lot of our this space and our culture, where we can just like break the mold a little bit. And yeah, for me, it's a balance between, like, at times I've felt like, there is that responsibility because I am sharing with people, and it does have an effect. And there has been questioning quite a bit of, oh, should I have said that, or all of this stuff. And I think that's so normal, but also not getting too tight, like letting yourself be free. Um, you know, yeah.
I agree with that, Noe, because I've at times when it's come to like my own videos, sometimes I feel like I stop myself from expressing the fullness of the truth, because I'm like, well, I don't know if my audience is ready to hear this. And I still know that people are on the journey, and they're not going to understand when I talk about the nature of consciousness in its purest and most wonderful way. They just will, they're still in the head, so to speak, and I've got to kind of address that. But then, what you said is also true. Like sometimes I feel like, you know what, we'll see if people get it, they get it. If they don't, they don't. That's not going to matter to me. um and I think, yes, just being able to play with the fullness of this consciousness, this awareness, is possibly an interesting way for content creation, I think, so to speak. And yeah, I think you do have to be playful with it because I think it can become really dry as well. So if
Yeah.
you're really serious, you're
And
like
I
sometimes you
yeah,
go
I
go.
like to have fun as well, like we all do. And I mean, to me, like I just don't think it would be worth it. And I love having fun and, enjoying myself. And, we all have different styles, but I think, yeah, it's like I guess it feels good. Like we want to wake up and have fun. We want to have something to like look forward to, right? And to me, this path, non-duality, spirituality, it's it's exciting and I love it. And I really do feel like it's something that's fun and we can learn to have more fun with. And then, some people might look at some, I know this isn't the case, it's back to what we were saying, like it could just be something I think, but some people could look at some sharings or a certain style of um, sharing something and think like, oh, this is too far, or um, this is wrong or incorrect. But like maybe that person just needs to see that at the time, and just that's not the right like thing they're meant to tune in with. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Um, and uh, I also truly believe that when we share the truth, um, you cannot guarantee how the audience is going to take that and what they're going to get from it. And it also depends on their mindset, what they've gone through the day. God knows what they've experienced. Um, and there's so much factors that go into how somebody will receive your message and your sharing. And um, but all we can do is be mindful of that, but still share, and just I guess just be mindful of it.
yeah.
Can't do anything else really.
You know what I think will be possible, which I can't wait for? Like with this whole, and some people might, fair enough, think like, oh, that's like, we don't want that. But with VR kind of progressing and that whole world, like, you know, 20 years from now, you can have like some headset on and it like scans your full face, like full photo realistic, and you can all feel like you're like sitting in a space, like this like beautiful big space together. But you're like in different parts of the world and you can like have some sort of like immersive sharing. Like I think
Yeah.
that's the benefit to these kind of things is like that will all be
Yes.
possible. And yeah,
I'm like,
have
that'd
like
be pretty
a big
impressive.
satsang, and it's like in some like
Yeah.
mystical jungle, and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's possible. I mean, I don't think that's far away. To be fair, I think that's pretty close. I think you could be looking at the next 5 to 10 years when people um, will have that. And what'd be interesting in that is, do we add another layer of existence when it comes to VR? You already have this world, then on top of that you got this VR world. Then are we able to maintain grounded in awareness during that time? Because that would be an interesting thing to also see whether we create a new VR kind of character, so to speak. Because that
Mhm.
can happen with people if they're not awakened. It's very easy to create a new persona within the persona you already have.
Yeah, and it's
Getting
on
interstellar, I was getting Inception there.
yeah, on a deeper level, it's like on a smaller scale, like that's already it's happening in some way online, right? Like people online, social
Yes,
media, and
yes,
like that's okay. That's just how naturally the ego works, is it wants to be seen a certain way. And I've always tried to remain like true to who I am and what I'm sharing, and not putting on anything. And it might resonate with some and others it doesn't, and I guess I share from that place. And yeah, so it's like that's happening on a small scale, and you're right, like it could be in those worlds, yeah. people um, kind of create another version of themselves, but that in itself will be like an awakening because like we're getting then into that creative
Mm,
space where we realize like, oh, things are not really fixed. Like what we immerse ourselves in, the identity is really, it's really fluid. And like the
mm,
creative like place we can get to where we feel at peace is like noticing the awareness is the power behind that, right?
mm.
And the more we can be in awareness, the more we can create, the less we take things about ourselves seriously, and we can just enjoy. Um, yeah,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think yes, and social media does create, on a smaller scale, a different sense of self, um, and and I find it quite interesting because no matter if you have a social media, actually, that's the one thing that I felt like with spirituality, uh, since I got serious about it, um, that you can't be of two different characters. Like, there's not a spiritual me and then a work me, a family me, whatever me. Like, there can't be two or three. You can't have two or three avatars in your mind. You can, if you're truly on the spiritual path. I think the safest way is just to be yourself
yeah,
and just be one. Whether if your workplace doesn't accept you, it's never going to accept you. Then don't take you so seriously. If your family doesn't take you seriously after that, well, what can we say?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you've got to be authentic on this journey, I feel. And I think if we're not honest, if we're not authentic, being spiritual and getting yourself to remain in awareness is a difficult task, because one will always be in the ego game,
yeah,
and it'd be masquerading as awareness
yeah.
in a weird way.
And it's exactly, and then it's like it's when that person on that path like is honest with themselves, like, and then they're speaking from that place, like you can feel it, right? And um I think like we all are in that place, but the more we can like be honest with ourselves and what we value, and yeah, not lying to ourselves, like reality does have a truth to it and it speaks from that place. And I think this is how we get free now, especially when we're entering a world where the biggest thing that people will struggle with is like deciphering what's true and what's not. You now have all these
Mm.
it's like a bit of a different topic, but you have all these like deep fake, AI videos, and you
Yeah.
see some of them, and then there's like all these older people like, oh my God, like what's happened? And then there's people just like, no, that's AI. And it's it's a similar thing with ourself, is like when we can just be grounded in ourself, be honest with what's happening in our experience, then you know, we just get more free. And I think when we get more free, and this has been part of the journey here, and it is with everyone, you know, when we can get more free and honest with ourselves, like these layers fall away, and we just lose that fear. We lose that fear more. We start opening to life more. And you're right, what you said before, that I don't believe there are no like set characters. That would be some, that's I guess an idea we have, that there's some like fixed character, like it's just life, it's just awareness expressing itself in that way, right? And just learning about itself. It's just that mirror, like the world is the mirror, and it's just the self, the
Mm.
larger self, learning about itself. And it's fun and it's a joy. And even when it feels serious or darker or heavy, like usually if someone is, if that's part of their journey, there's something there for them to see, that that's not actually the reality of what's here, right? Like it's like breaking out of
Mm.
that kind of like story or identification.
So my question here would be, how have you, or have you done anything specific where you've maintained your authentic self? Like you mentioned, you got your parents, you got siblings, you got a partner. Uh, how have you made sure that you remain as an authentic person? Because also there can be a spiritual, like. Some people can put on a spiritual personality,
Uh-huh.
so to speak. So, have you
Yeah.
made sure that you've maintained being you, the personality that you've been blessed with, rather than adorning the spiritual uh, attire, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's like an important one for like all of us to ask. And I have a lot, because I think like the more you share, the more openly you express, like at least here, the more I've actually like kind of checked in with myself. Like, am I like, what place is this coming from? And I think that's very normal, like on a human level. And it's just being honest and even asking those around me, close to me, like to, hey, like, pull me up if I'm saying anything, um, that is a bit off, or I'm not being true to myself. I'm not like saying that all the time, but I've like mentioned that
Yeah,
before, and I just trust that with those around me. I guess I've had that supportive environment growing up, and I love being honest about my human reality and experience as well. Um, Even with my partner, that's what I've like learnt with her a lot is like, really like being honest with your human experience and like what's
mm,
arising. And, you know, yes, there's one side to this path, which is like, you discover awareness, but like you've still got your human life here. And it's just, yeah, like, I guess it's always just coming back to that place of like, why am I doing this? And like my intention. And like even being younger and, going and studying like filmmaking and acting for a year. And like I did lots of creative work, like artwork. Then it's like always been to like, have some effect or to create something that's actually going to inspire others or yeah, and it's for myself as well. So I think like having that core foundation and
mm,
intention, like it's always the bedrock. And
mm.
I like I've said, like I've had a couple of moments where I have felt quite out there and um, like it has been difficult at times, but that's so normal as well. And it's important that I say that, so others don't think like, oh, it's just me going through some crazy thing, you know? So,
I'm really glad that you've mentioned what you have, and I think it's so true. Like one, making sure. I do believe that. Um, your parents or your family, your friends, they they can tell you when they feel like ego is coming up, or they can. I've had comments like, "Oh, this is not what you said on the podcast before," um, or "This is not what you say on your podcast. You're acting a bit different." And so that's when you kind of think, okay, you can then inquire: was my behavior actually different, or was it just perceived differently? And we can go through that inquiry, and or if actually being a father has been the number one, I would say, the teaching, as well as my son being the teacher, because or I think they say the guru is always a mirror. And whenever I'll be like, 3 o'clock in the morning, he's woken up for probably the fifth time, and you're super annoyed. You want to go back to sleep. You're cranky, and then you kind of realize, well, if you get angry, one, he's not going to understand that. He's not going to understand why you're angry. He doesn't understand that you haven't slept. But if you go, and I've noticed when I'm angry, he gets more annoyed and cries more. But when I'm calm, he settles, and I'm like, oh, it's such an easy thing. And I think so fatherhood. I'm not saying I'm a pro now that I'm always calm, but but it's been a great teacher, and I think our humanness can actually teach us more about our connection of oneness with each other than say sometimes just meditating alone or doing self-inquiry, so to speak. Um, so I'm glad that you have those parameters where that's a good sign. Yeah, I think we should always have that. Like, yeah, just call me out if I'm being a prick, or something
Yeah.
like that.
And yeah, it's so true. Like our life experience can really just teach us so much. And I've met people on this path, and like I've met some before. I'm thinking about specifically who like they haven't really tried. They haven't really tried to follow spiritual path. It's just a lot of people actually they naturally open to this kind of like more life, you know, this more fulfilling, like alive presence through not even following any of this stuff, just through life experience, just through learning. And yeah, thanks for sharing that with your son. That was really like beautiful to hear, and that's something I'm looking forward to if that's meant to happen. And I've heard that it can be a big teacher, and like how I imagine, and I don't know as well because it's not what I'm experiencing, but I imagine, and especially with old generations, when you were younger, if it's like you get angry, like it's like, or there's, the kid is upset and then you get angry, it's like their being doesn't know. And so it's part of like the practice to like, I imagine just letting it be, like letting the full human experience uh, take place. And then we allow that in ourselves as well. And that's the same with all of these life experiences is like just radical acceptance in a way. Um,
Mm.
like when things are challenging with someone in our personal life or our experience, or there's like difficult emotions, it's like allowing, and it's usually like our mind a lot of the time. And I still have it here where I still realize things uh, from the past. It's not often, but things that just there's like, oh, little energetic layers there where like the mind kind of like creates this belief system or this
Mm.
story out of it. Like, oh, you said this back then, or like this happened, and like that was not good. And like we all play these stories, and it's like there's not the more you awaken to now to reality, it's like no, there's actually no substance to this, and there's nothing to be afraid of. Like, yeah, we're free now. So
Yes. Yeah. No, what you said is actually really beautiful. That when you are um, in the now, when you're radically accepting of the moment, uh, you also, one thing that's been very conscious with me has been like, I don't want to pass on any generational trauma to my kid, so to my son or to anyone. So being conscious of that, it does mean you come into the present moment and forgiving everything that has happened in the past and not bringing it forward, not carrying it, just letting that baggage go. And um, and you can only do that, like you said, when there's radical acceptance and I guess radical forgiveness of the person, whether they knowingly, consciously or unconsciously did things or said things, and just moving forward, and making sure that one doesn't repeat the same mistakes, which, you know, we are creatures of habit. And I think the more we are in awareness, we stay away from building upon those habits and allowing them to express themselves in what would be unconscious. I was going to say negative, but unconscious would be better. Or creating more ignorance, as you mentioned. Like we call them kind of vasanas in Sanskrit, is when you keep they start off as some scholars, so it's a one-off event,
Samskaras.
but
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
and then it gets built up into a vasana,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's a lots of vasanas we got to kind of. That's the one thing that
So
if I may say.
sorry if I cut in, is
No, sure,
is it
go on.
Savasana that is
So
is that a collection of samskaras that is built?
so yes, so you
Yeah.
could say the snowball effect is the vasana.
Hmm.
So it starts off as a little snowball. It's a one-off thing that's happened that creates some samskara, like a little imprint, and then suddenly that imprint gets a lot deeper when it's repeated a bit more, and it then becomes either a characteristic we have or a habit we have, or certain reactions that we tend to always do. That becomes that's what would be termed as a vasana. And what I find a lot, which I could say, if there is a critique I have of the modern non-dual circles, is this: that um, the work on like our vasanas and our conditioning isn't done before we get to awareness. Like in Advaita Vedanta, in the traditional way, you have to kind of be you could say there's a bit of gatekeeping
Hmm.
in a weird way, but it's like you got to be ready for this. If we're going to show you the fullness of your true nature, we got to make sure that your mind is ready for this.
Hmm.
We got to make sure that your body is prepared for this. And so I feel sometimes if modern non-duality doesn't deal with it beforehand, it should definitely deal with it afterwards. But the problem that I find that happens
Do
afterwards,
you mean,
and I
sorry,
alluded to this before.
do you mean if the samskaras and sadasanas are dealt with like before the realization, like that's
Yes,
better outcome?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's more stabilized. One is more stabilized
Yeah.
when those are dealt with beforehand. And I guess like for me, it's always been second nature because growing up in an Indian household and Indian spirituality is kind of spoken about a lot. I went to a satsang every week, still do. I guess those things keep me grounded, but those dealt with those vasanas and also allows certain samskaras to not grow as a result. But if I didn't have that, and say I uh, watched, let me think of a really like say Rupert Spira is a really potent teacher. So say I listened to him once and I can grasp what he's saying, but if I haven't dealt with my vasanas, they're gonna still be there,
Yeah.
regardless if I'm in awareness
Yeah.
and awakened.
Exactly. And that's like why we could wake up to like the nature of who we are, and we could see all of that, but then our human like reality is still here. So I really think I really believe like the mastery for me is like the blending of both.
Hmm.
And I actually feel like the more I've gone into presence and the transcendence, the more I've really come to understand and appreciate and take seriously my human life and reality. And a lot of people say this who maybe go to like a monastery or something. You hear a lot that like they go, they spend a certain amount of time there, and then they realize it's not what they actually uh, want to do. And maybe for some, that's the path they take, and that's fine. But a lot might realize like, oh, that's not the answer in this case. It's to like be in the world and like experience the gift of life like through that energy, through that presence. um and yeah, yeah, it's important that like it's not bypassed the human reality, but like to also not go so far into it, like to come back to who you are, and really see. And this has been a huge uh like teaching to myself, is like just seeing the reality behind the narratives or the mental narratives, and that like wow, they really do, these samskaras they really do carry like a lot of heaviness in them, and
Mm.
um, it takes like a certain level, it takes a certain amount of presence, right, to see those, and then to just like to not feed them anymore.
Yes. Yes. No. And thank you for being really transparent and yeah. So and to be fair, what's really interesting is that they also say that certain vasanas will go into like this uh, pralaya state, like this dormant state, that just so you can still maintain the human experience, they will be there dormant. And even though one can be enlightened, one so for example, um, say the vasana for a dessert will always be there within me, but I don't have to act upon it. But it's the one thing that will keep me kind of going in life, because sometimes you hear about how you can get so wrapped in the experience of one's true nature that one discards the body, um, and so to avoid that, I think what they say is that there's these vasanas that probably still maintain that are still maintained just so the enlightened being can actually function and still share this message of truth and reality to people.
Yeah, and stay in the human reality, because it's
Yes.
like if one which we all are going back to, if one awakens like so fully 100% to love and aliveness, right, and
Mm.
there's no, like you were saying, nothing keeping them here, like I'm every being, every individual expression in this human reality, yes, has those um whether they're even small little savasanas or samskaras, and that's what keeps us here. But like, awakening so fully to reality and to aliveness, and it might sound scary for some, but it's really not, because it's like you're just awakening to love and reality. It's really like what we see as death in some way, and
Mm.
like, I guess it's like we're kind of like, it's a weird paradox where we're like here to experience the human life, and it's like a beautiful, beautiful thing, even to have those um struggles, whatever they are, um and so, but there's nothing to fear at the end of the day. Like, I think there's so many paradoxes in this, where like some people can awaken to presence and love and reality, and it's like, whoa, and even I feel like that at times. Like, there's just so much aliveness, like so much that I actually feel, that it's almost like, the mind, and this doesn't happen, but it's probably possible, the mind can say like, this is too much. And I think that's where, like, yeah, people, like, there's different stages maybe where people might feel like, oh, like time to go back, you know, into just the human, the nitty
Mm.
gritty a bit. And yeah, I think it's like around all of this is just that learning to play and enjoy. Um, and there is nothing to fear. It's amazing what's happening. Like, so many beings are like realizing this and awakening to this. And when we do, like, we suffer more. We sorry, we suffer less. We
Mm.
don't suffer more.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
Yes.
even, yeah.
That's a good one. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the mind may suffer more before it realizes it doesn't have to suffer at all. Um, uh, yeah, and maybe you mentioned death, and it's actually one of my favorite topics to talk about, because we live in a culture where we think we're going to live forever. I know that we all know death is around the corner, but at the same time, it's like we accumulate so much where we think we're going to be here for eternity, and death is that wonderful reminder that this is really temporary. It puts when you know there's a limited time, I know I found that when like on the spiritual journey, it's more exhilarating knowing that I only have a couple more years maybe left, or decades more. But the thing is, uh, I want to spend the rest of my life being grounded in awareness, if you know what I mean. Like,
Hmm.
that's the that's the best way for me to live. That is, it may sound really ideal, but death is my kind of reminder that, if tomorrow doesn't come, at least you can be in awareness today, and you
Hmm.
can be in the fullness of your true nature today, and live a pretty good human life, and be a decent human being.
Yeah.
Um, so I think sometimes our culture doesn't talk about death enough. There's a fear around it, you know.
Yeah, and there's a lot in the West that's especially hidden around death, and it's like, let's cover that up, and we don't want to know about it, we don't want to hear about it, but it's the most natural thing ever, and even take away
Mm,
that word, like, because that word has a lot of weight to it. It's really just like aliveness, and you're so right, is like it's bringing, the gift is like to live this human life, like with that aliveness, and to like stay here and to do what you want to do. Like, we're entering a world now where, yes, on one hand, there's a lot happening that isn't pretty and isn't nice, but we're entering a world where there will be so much abundance, where there will be a lot of really beautiful things. And it's like, to just do what you love doing, like go snowboarding if that's what you love,
mhm.
go share, amazing art. And I know it all sounds like quite, like a utopia, but it's definitely like it's quite a possible and probable timeline that we're opening to here. And yeah, it's like kind of like the process and this kind of unfoldment, like it's happening for all of us, even if someone doesn't notice it, and it's completely natural. And you know, it's yeah, I guess we can't do anything about it. So
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
it's the gift of like
Y-
just like you were saying, yeah, like just being a good human being, or like just um doing good for others. And yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, um, yeah, it's interesting because I remember. So my brother, my older brother, he passed away in 2013. So that'd be 12 years ago. It didn't feel like 12 years, but I remember saying to him, like, because he knew he was going to die because he had a heart condition, and I asked him a number of times, "Are you scared of death?" And he was like, "No, because I'm just going here. I'm not going anywhere." And then at the time, I didn't really fully understand what he was talking about. But now I get it. Like, actually, you can't go anywhere. Yeah, the human body's going to break, and that's going to dissolve away, and that will enter back into the earth, and um, the mind will diminish. But one's true nature does remain. And that's so true. My consciousness will always be here, it cannot go anywhere. When I say mine, it's there's only the one consciousness. Um, and so when my brother said that, 12 years ago, I probably didn't appreciate it as much as I do today, where I'm like, yeah, he's he was spitting bars just before he's gonna die, and I truly value that today because I think, yeah, that's true. If I'm not really going anywhere. No one really goes anywhere. Um, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that you don't miss the person. I think a lot of people think you bypass grief. No, you still go through grief, but you also understand that that is the natural part of being in this world, this human life. The fact it has an expiry date is what's beautiful about it, rather than what's morbid about it, so to speak.
Yeah, wow, thanks for sharing that. I really felt that when you shared that. Like, I could feel that, like, love and power coming through you, just even in sharing that. So thanks. And I really I feel that as well. Like when you share that like yeah, we're not going anywhere, and like it's only beauty, it's only love, it's only what we really are that we're actually opening to. And I know for a fact that when this body is no longer here, like I'll be dancing with all of those that are
Mm,
close to me, with you. And it's like we're just we're opening to something really like epic and true and magical. But like for now, it's like you were saying, like it's hard to put that into words in this human experience. So it's like just be grateful for each day, and you know um,
yeah,
bring that knowingness of our nature through the human experience.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I think I dealt with my brother's death really well. The one death which I found very challenging was when my guru passed away. He died in an accident, and that was a shock. And I was very, very close to him. And when you have a teacher that you really resonated with, which was like a friendship, losing that was like a big challenge. Um, but you know what's really weird? I was sharing this with like some friends. Like sometimes I feel like in the middle of the day, I'll just think of him, and I just feel like there's an energy next to me, or I feel like someone's embracing me. And I said before, I would never think that these things can happen, but energy doesn't die, and so that presence, that individual presence, will never die either. That's always going to be here. Yeah, it's not going to be in the physical, five elemental form, but it's there in energy.
Mhm.
And I think uh, at the time, I think that's the one death where I felt like, well, I was so close to getting counseling, because I felt I needed it. But somehow, I don't know, I was able to come out of that. Um, but it was because for me, it was like, how could my hero go? Like, this is the person who I thought was invincible,
Yeah.
and he's gone. And but uh, that in itself was the biggest lesson, that if he can go, then anyone can go. And he always said that. I think, in fact, he said this when he was in Australia on a tour, which I think he was in Perth. He said something like, I could die tomorrow, I could die in the next second, I don't know when I could die, nobody knows. And he mentioned this, and everyone was like, well, why did he say this? It's like an off the cuff remark that he said, and it's like, why did he mention this? But again, it's these tiny lessons that we have. But the biggest lesson from that has been that, and the more I've studied non-duality, that your Ishtevta, so like in Bhakti, the one that you worship, that will always be around you. That can never go, and whether you call that God or your guru, or Krishna or the Buddha, whatever you want to call it, that will always be with you. That's something that you can always connect to. And it's taken me, my guru died in 2016, so it's taken me, I would say, a good 4 or 5 years to get to this place. But it's brought a lot of peace now. And
Yeah. And I'm
yeah.
sure what you recognize, like yeah, in your guru, in your brother, right? Like it's something that's also like it's them, but it's not them. And I'm sure like you see that
Mm,
in others and in
yes.
everything. And these prophets and mystics and these people in history, like they were just symbols within of the divine and of consciousness, just like we are, that were able to merge with that. And
Mm.
um, yeah,
So yeah, I mean, I would like to ask, do you have particular people that you find our role models? I know that everyone is a guru and everyone is a teacher in a way, but is there any people that you specifically felt a real close affinity to spiritually, or has your growth been more like an organic one through your own self and your own inquiry?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. Yeah, it has been really organic through my own inquiry, and um, that's really been at the forefront. But I have had people who have been, of course, like people I look up to, people that I feel like have been guides in some way. Like, I would say firstly, like my parents for sure. Like, um, without them, like I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be none of this would have arisen. And they've
Mm.
been so helpful in this as well. Like around the time when I was in teen years, I was becoming interested in this stuff. Like I think my dad was going through a bit of a midlife crisis, and he stopped drinking and everything, which I really admired as well. And he read The Power of Now and all of that, and he gave me that book, and that was something
Wow.
I was already a bit interested in this stuff, but just gave more of an opening. And then I feel like people like Eckhart and some other teachers, yeah, have been like huge guides. And just not even that, just the people that I've met in my life and have been part of my journey. Also, teachers in this human life and in the divine as well. And I was thinking back to what you said before, um, about your brother, and how like when the body does go, like we are still here, and we're actually here on like many levels. Like it's very multidimensional. There's like so many ways in which we exist. And I had a friend who, and I was thinking like, yeah, yeah, I should share this, but like I had a friend who also like passed away um, a couple of
Mm.
years ago, and I met him on a retreat actually, and I know he was really connected spiritually. I think he followed Bhakti Yoga quite a lot, and he would just give me advice here and there. Like he was in his 40s, and um, I actually went and did a retreat once, actually, and some people might be familiar with this. I'm not saying that people should go to anything, but it was like involving plant medicine, and it was like really, um, it was really profound, and you're connecting with a larger spiritual reality. And I actually had this experience in there where he actually like showed up in it, and he was like, hey, Noe, like he's like, yeah, I know this is weird, because it was like it was realer than real, and everyone says this about these things, if that's what someone decides to do. And he showed up and he said, I know this feels weird, but kind of like keep going. And he was like encouraging. And I remember I just had like tears rolling down my eyes. And I've heard about this with people, not even through um, natural medicine, just through like dreams. And maybe you've experienced that yourself in some way, is like some form of like connection from the outside, which is really here. And that these things just like create more of an understanding that, yeah, um, there is magic, and there is like, like we all are connected even beyond this human life. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. And one thing I was going to say is kudos to your dad for giving you the power of now when you're a teen, because you know what? Um, I truly believe that kids deserve to have a spiritual education as well as worldly education that the government sets for each country, their syllabus and all that. But I think spirituality should also be taught um, on a mainstream level. Um, Maybe
Yeah.
not on a mainstream level, but at least within our homes.
Mm.
with
And
our
even
parents. So I
schools,
think,
I used to think
yeah,
that, like, why is this not taught in schools? Like, why is this not a subject? Like, I probably would have loved that and needed that in
yeah,
school because it really wasn't working out for me at the time. And you know, like, yeah, it would be great to see something like that in the future, and it
yeah,
might not even be needed because there's just more of a natural understanding there.
yeah, yeah. I hope so. So that's one thing that I think is really good, and I'm grateful for my parents as well, for that. Where spirituality was always in my life. I didn't have to kind of look for it, and I think I'm very grateful for that. Um, and then, and yeah, just going on to the point, yes, I totally feel. I mean, there's been times when I felt like my guru has been with me in certain situations, or and actually it's actually more of the coincidence that happened when he was alive that really I could not explain. Like, there'd be times when I'd be thinking about him and I'd be in tears, just the joy of being connected to him, and he would like send me a WhatsApp message that morning, or and just be like, "Oh, how are you doing?" And I'm thinking, how does he know that I'm thinking about him? And that's why I think energy does travel far more than we can understand. And then the other aspect that I've kind of felt more of is, so now, like, so his daughter's now taken over the spiritual institution, and like sometimes when I look at her, I feel his presence, and I'm like, this is, sometimes I try to be so rational in my head that then I have these experiences, and I'm like, why do I even bother being so rational, when that can be blocking me from experiencing something much deeper. Um, so, and that only happens if we truly understand that everything is formless, in my opinion. When we're so stuck on form, um, we will limit it in many ways and be like, this can happen, that can happen, that can't happen, that can't happen. And that's what happens. But when we allow the experience of life to just be formless and boundless, then, as you mentioned, the aliveness that's felt is beyond description, beyond the bliss that actually comes from it, the joy that comes from that is, nothing can come close to that. I know that, one may find joy from alcohol and from substances of some kind, but I would say, if you want to try something that's really potent, have spiritual bliss.
Mm. And even that,
There's nothing that comes close to it.
even those things can be like bliss for that person. Like,
Yes, yes,
that
yes,
I have, I know friends have many that are like, so alive and in bliss. And it's like, you kind of, at least the journey here, like, go past that place of like, oh, well, this is the right thing or wrong thing. And then you just feel this
exactly.
connection and love. And
Yeah,
you're so
I agree
right.
with you.
Like, it's like the aliveness that you can feel, which is like, I would describe it as like a similar feeling when you feel those ecstatic moments in your life, when you're like really in love with someone, or you're having like a peak experience, or you just feel so much joy that everything everything falls away. And it's like, it's
Mhm.
yeah, like you were saying, it's when we take the form too seriously, just like, you know, it's paradoxical. Like, when we take it too seriously, we can get really lost in it, and that's when we suffer. But it is a bit of a game in some way, and for the game to appear, there has to be dualities, right? Like,
Mm.
that's how the appearance of separation appears. And just like a movie, um, when there's Tom Cruise running down a street in a high-speed chase, we can get really like, our heart starts beating, like get really like some people maybe panicky. Um,
Yeah.
but we can forget that we're actually the person in the seat watching the movie. And so when we can return to that, like knowing that it's an appearance, like it's an
Mm,
appearance that we're like immersing within, like
mm,
awareness, consciousness being the thing that's immersing within space time. Just like on the movie screen, how it like appears like there's distance, the sounds, everything, the characters, then we can come back to peace, knowing that, we are
mm,
awareness, we are the ones sitting in the seat now here. But paradoxically, like we also want that, like consciousness also wants that, right? To go into the game and like have that experience and do that. Otherwise, what's the whole point of it? And I do
mm,
believe like what's happening in the play of life and form here is like we can learn to like have more fun with it now and create it into a like better movie, if that makes sense. If
mm.
so,
Yes.
yeah,
A better sequel.
yeah,
um,
yeah,
yeah. Um, that's I really really loved what you said. That's something worth contemplating upon. And it's interesting because in the Upanishads, which is I'm sure you must have come across them. Um, you know, they say roughly 5,000 years ago, the ancient rishis were meditating and they were asked a question, why did Brahman create the universe? What was the point of consciousness creating this whole world? And the answer was, one of the answers were just the joy of rediscovering itself. That's why. And I think that's true. Like, yeah, and yeah, it sounds like again paradoxical, but I think truth is paradoxical. I think reality, life is paradoxical. Um, but yeah, the fact that when you realize that it's just God finding itself, uh, it becomes, I don't know, it becomes a bit more interesting. Um,
yeah, yeah,
uh, like then you don't get stuck in the weeds of why. I think that answer it's not, like the Zen koans, it's not for your rational mind, it's for something beyond that. So when I heard that answer, or read the answer, that it's just a joy for rediscovering itself, it just made so much sense, but it transcended the mind, if that makes sense.
yeah.
um so I really loved what you said. That just sparked that thought, really. Yeah, it's beautiful. um and yeah, I really love movies that take me on that immersive experience, like Inception, and even like Interstellar. Um, like even the really hard ones, like Tenet was a really, like, Christopher Nolan has a knack for doing that. But even Tenet, I really loved because it was messing around with time so much that I just loved that.
Yeah.
Um,
And some of
the
these, not even movies, like art pieces, they can actually like, I
Yes.
think the ones that have so much effect and beauty are the ones that like bring the person into that experience and almost like
Mm,
collaborate with what they're watching or what they're
yes.
looking at. And like, um, we went yesterday to in Sydney, like the Modern Art Museum, and there was this piece in one of the rooms that was like it was dark. It was like really dark room, and there was like smoke everywhere. And then there was like a projector with a light that was like a sphere. It was like a cone shining out, and you could see all
Mm,
this smoke through it. But then when you went into the sphere or near the projector, everyone that goes in, like you want to take photos and you want to be creative and play with it. And we were saying after, like, that's the most that's the one you remember. That's the one that is like
mm.
it's so powerful because then you're interacting. You're not just the one like seeing the art. You're just like this world. You're like playing with the form and you're creating with
Yeah.
it. So yeah,
You're the artist as well as the art.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Um, so yeah, I think it's been a great conversation. We'll wrap it up. But what I want to ask is, how can people find you? Is there anything that you're offering right now which people can sign up for? Um, and any like concluding remarks that you want to give as well.
Yeah, so I have my YouTube channel where I do most of my sharings, Knowe Rata, and my Instagram where I have my sharings and lots of memes to uh, keep it fun. And you might like that, you might not, and that's okay. And you might like my videos, you might not, and that's okay as well. Um, but yeah, and I'm not really at the moment. I'm just creating. I'm just creating what I love to share and create, and yeah, let's see what happens. And thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it. It's been a really good conversation, and yeah, maybe we can like come back to it in the future or something.
Yeah, 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 definitely. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've learned a lot. Um, and most of all, it's just, um, I think it's nice to speak to someone also where you know, will understand what you're talking about. And I felt that with you. I felt that with your videos. I mean, I really enjoy watching your videos. They come up normally when I wake up in the morning. So I see that, and for some reason YouTube like highlights your videos for me. So which is really sweet. So I get to see it, and I've learned a lot from them. I really liked a few interviews that you did with Gary, and just in general, I think the wisdom that you share. One, I think what I really love, and I've mentioned this, is that the humanness aspect, the humanity that you have, really speaks, and I think that's what really has drawn me to listen to you, and I know that will be the case for my audience as well, because sometimes spirituality can be all airy fairy, or it can be really dry, and I think you got a good balance. There's and you know, your wisdom that you share most of all is one that can help others to transcend the limited self that they hold to be true. And I think if anyone gets a breakthrough, you're one of the avenues that can help them. But thank you for coming onto the show. I know that we had a lot of people don't know behind the scenes, but we had quite a few scheduling issues.
It's taken
But
a
you've
little
been,
bit to make it happen. That's okay. And that's in my human life, probably something I'm not as good at is like being kind of consistent with emailing and all of that. And some people close to me. And again, this could just be something I'm telling myself, but might know that like, you know, getting back to some people, on time. And thank you for what you were saying. That was really nice. And yeah, we're all in this together. And, yes, we're individuals, but also you are me and I am you, and we're all here to learn. And we're all learning in this human world, but like we're also opening to something really beautiful. And yeah, thank you for what you do as well. And, you have done a lot of amazing podcasts and videos. I've tried to watch some when I can. And yeah, thanks for having me on.
thank you, and we'll definitely have you on again. You've been an amazing guest, and um, I think there's still a lot more that we can chat about. I think normally the first one is always like the introduction, and then it's like, okay, the next one is going to be a bit more deeper, and um, definitely one that I think also whatever we couldn't cover today, we can cover in the next one for sure. So we'll be better with that scheduling
Yeah,
for sure for
yeah.
the next one.
All right.
But yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been really enjoyable. Really liked it. Thanks, Rahul.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right.
Thank you.
See ya.
Take
Have a good
care.
night. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.